Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And today's guest is Jason Stirbinskis, who's the MD of Los Cerros, who are an ASX-listed exploration and mining company, who are a leading Colombian gold explorer and developer with a focus in the regions of Mid-Cauca Gold Belt in obviously Colombia. Jason is a geologist by background and has been a lead and involved in obviously many projects across the world in Australia, Africa, Central Asia, and South America. Also has an MBA and happens to be an honorary consul of Kazakhstan in Western Australia. Jason's on the podcast to give us a more in-depth understanding of the project in Colombia. And we'd like to welcome Jason to the podcast. How are you doing, Jason?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate your time as well. So why don't you give us a little bit of a background about yourself? Obviously, I mentioned that you're a geologist by background and have done an MBA. So just wonder if you can just take us through that journey of your career to sort of present day.
Sure. So I started off as a geologist, got a bachelor's in geology, University of Western Australia, and worked as a geologist for a few years. And then I did an MBA, and that led me into strategic consulting. So I was working for a consulting firm, and our client base were executive management and those sorts of things. So it was more around strategy and similar, and not through any great intention, but more just stumbling into various opportunities. Those consulting assignments took a very strong banking focus. We just happened to be a consultancy that were experts in areas of banking, certain aspects of banking. And so I found myself working in banking for quite a few years. And then on the tail end of that, and coming back to Perth, which is where I'm based, I got into consulting and then ultimately into the management of metallurgical consultancies. So I was the general manager of a metallurgical consultancy. And then one day I happened to be talking to a friend of mine who worked in recruitment. And she said to me, well, you've got the trifecta for the MD of a junior. You've got banking experience, you've got metallurgical experience, and you're a geologist. So you've got all the three things that you need in a MD of a junior. And that's kind of been the story ever since. So I've been the managing director of various companies with Australian assets, Northern European assets. So we've had some projects in Norway, Sweden, and so on, and in Africa, in Guinea and Botswana. And of course, you mentioned Kazakhstan. I'm the honorary consul of Kazakhstan. That came about because I was the MD of a gold explorer that transitioned into a gold developer in Kazakhstan, and the honorary consul position is sort of a legacy from that time. And now in Colombia.
Yeah. Why don't you just give us a background of Los Cerros? Obviously, since you joined there as the MD.
Yeah, the way this came about is I was the MD of Andes Resources, which is in Colombia as well. It's in the Mid-Cauca as well, as you mentioned earlier. But we were not listed. So we were a public unlisted company with 60 shareholders or 70 shareholders or so. And we had intentions to list in 2019, I think it was, early 2019. But we were aware of Mid-Minco to the south of us, still in the Mid-Cauca Porphyry Belt and still in Colombia. And they were a listed company and had a few challenges on their path, along their path. And they secured a project called Chuscal, which is part of their Quinchia project, and I'll talk about that soon, I'm sure. But they secured that project, and we thought that was a very exciting project. We'd always known about that project, and we thought, well, it was quite a coup for Minco to have secured that project. And we decided to start a conversation with Minco about merging the two companies together. So to cut that longer story shorter, Andy's joined with Minco. We got the listing out of that through merging with Minco. I became the managing director of the merged entity. My chairman became chairman. And to reflect that very significant change, we rebranded as Los Cerros, which means the hills in Spanish, and off we went from there. So that was kind of late 2019, but we really started to get momentum behind us in early 2020.
Okay, and I wonder if you can just tell us a little bit more about the actual project.
Yeah, so there's two projects that were project level. So we have the Andes project, which is the one that I was talking about, and then the old Minco story, which was the Quinchia project. But that is made up of a number of interesting targets of various stages of advancement. So we have the Miraflores DFS. So that is a reserve with engineering behind it, and we can talk about the economics of that if you like, but it's modest scale production, reasonably robust financials at sort of 1400 US gold an ounce, but not a major scale. It's not going to change the world. It's just modest scale production. So that's Miraflores, and that's like, if you like, the foundation of the Quinchia story. And if you draw a 3 kilometre radius around that, you hit a great number of targets, some of them very early stage, like Santa Sofia and Los Medios and a few others like that. And then you get more advanced targets, again, very close to this Miraflores foundation. And that's been, those more advanced projects have been the ones that have really driven the share price and our success over the last 18 months. And it's been quite a ride. The main one of those is Tesserito, which when we started drilling there, had a few holes, and there was 2 holes in particular that were particularly exciting for various reasons. And then we drilled that in a late sort of Q3 2020. And that's what really changed the company. We hit 230 meters at a gram per ton starting on the surface, which is consistent with those other 2 holes that I mentioned historically that were quite interesting. And that really took Tesorito from a target to a legitimate at surface porphyry discovery. And the market reacted accordingly. Off we went. And it's been a fantastic story ever since. So we've been drilling intensively at Tesserito. We have 4 rigs drilling Tesserito at the moment, and that just keeps on delivering 200 and 300 meter intercepts at a gram per ton from surface. So, you know, some globally significant results, announcement after announcement. It's getting a bit ridiculous now how many of these good results we have at Tesserito, but we have other targets in the area that are progressing as well.
Yeah. Obviously, just moving on from that, obviously the company's defined a significant, obviously, discovery over the last 12 months, which is obviously a driver for the share price success. Can you tell us more about that discovery and how it's evolved over that period, and where to next with that discovery? Sure.
Yeah, that's the Tesserito target. So I remember back in early 2020, I think at the lowest point, we were sub 2 cents, our share price. And then we drilled this Tesserito discovery, and off we went. So we're bouncing around 15 cents now. We went from 7 million market capitalization early last year through to 80, 90 million market cap now. And it's all based on that Tesserito story. What was really interesting in the sort of recent history of drilling there is that we obviously found a central zone that kept on delivering high grade, sort of 1.5 gram per ton material at sort of 100 meters underground, but starts at surface, but the good stuff is about 100 meters underground, 80 meters or so. But the most recent revelation, if you like, is some of these holes that we were drilling to test the edges. You know, we were trying to find the edges of this thing. We hit 36 meters at 3 grams per ton on the surface. So that's certainly not the edge of something. That's the center of something. So whilst we were looking for the edges, we think we actually found where the central zone breached the surface. And that, of course, opened up a whole new area that we thought was the edge, but potentially the middle. And therefore, there's the potential for this thing to grow significantly in a number of directions. So exciting times ahead of us. Yeah.
You recently completed a $20 million Australian dollar raise. I just wonder if you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, what happened is we were road showing with a North American focus, but globally, but we were road showing. And that led to 2 significant precious metal funds, North American based, but global, they're the top of the top. They expressed interest in taking roughly 5% positions each. And so that translated to roughly a $10 million investment from these 2 precious metal funds. And so we added to that. We went into a trading halt and started building a book and added another 10 million from our existing shareholders and a few other participants out of the UK and out of Australia to close it just marginally above $20 million capital raise. But it's a big step change for the company, because we went from what was predominantly just an entirely Australian-focused shareholder registry to one that is now truly international and on the radar of some of the biggest players in the industry.
Yeah, and what are your plans? What you're looking to do with that money? Have you sort of planned out what you're looking to, where to spend it?
Yeah, the bulk of it will go into the drilling program. We have 4 drill rigs running continuously. We have had 4 rigs running for quite a while now, and we have flagged to the market that there's probably a 5th rig at some point. So we've got 4 rigs running. That's obviously generating lots of news flow. The bulk of that at Tesserito, but we also have intentions of exploring some of our other targets like Cebal and Chuscal and all these other Spanish names in the area. But the bulk of it's coming out of Tesserito. So in terms of where the money's going, the bulk of it is drilling and news flow flowing from that. We also have, as I mentioned earlier, Miraflores, which is a very advanced project with a supporting DFS. Now we're going through the final submissions to government to have a production license approved for Miraflores. So we have the optionality of going into production. I'm not saying that means we're going to go into production. That's not what I'm saying. But we do have the optionality of doing that if we choose to. So we could be completing that as well. And also what we did on, we were doing it anyway, but sort of ramped it up even more after the $20 million capital raise, is we've now got a dedicated target generation team. So we think we've only just scratched the surface of the Quinchia area. You know, we've got a great number of targets, but we now know the drivers that form the mineralization in this area. We've got a reasonably good handle on what dictates where this mineralization will be. And that's sort of illuminating a lot of other areas that we need to look at that perhaps weren't given a serious look in under previous ownership. So we've got this dedicated team from geologists right through to field teams and similar, working on target generation, not just at Quinchia, but also at the Andes portfolio.
Yeah. If you compare the projects, which one has the better prospects, or are they sort of completely different?
Well, it depends on your criteria. Look, if you want something that has a lot of meat on the bones, if you like, then that's Miraflores. It's got an established reserve. We've done all the metallurgy. We know the recovery rates and so on, and we know the financials from the modelling. So that's sort of got a lot of meat to it. Tesorito is the next one sort of down in terms of the level of understanding that we have, and that's proven to be very exciting. You know, we've got lots of drill intercepts. It's looking like something quite significant, especially given that it's on the surface. It's not 100 meters underground. It literally, mineralization starts from 0 meters and keeps on going for 200 to 300 meters down. Some of them much longer, 600 meters. We've got an intercept of 600 meters in one of the holes. So that's got a developing story, fairly advanced. You can start looking at that and making sort of guesses around how big this thing could be. And then sitting behind that is a few other targets like Chuscal and Cebal, which have had drilling in them, lots of smoke, lots of potential, but earlier stage. So who knows how they'll turn out, but positive starts. And then you've got the greenfield. So if you want to be, look right back to the early start, we've got a great number of targets in Quinchia and Andes that we've hardly touched yet. Okay.
And then obviously less than 1K from the new discovery in Miraflores with its mineral reserve and DFS. What are your production plans there?
Yeah, well, as I said, it's modest scale. It's interesting, and it's got sort of reasonably robust economics to it. So I don't want to dismiss it, but in terms of the level of focus, Tesserito, some 1 kilometre away, is looking like being something far more compelling and far larger. So that's where we're focused. Tesserito, whilst it was the sort of the theme of earlier conversations, Miraflores, the one with the advanced reserve, whilst that was the theme of earlier conversations, it's now even more so, and more as we know more about Tesserito, is becoming more of a side story to the main story, which is hunting these elephants in the area. There's these big porphyries and the potential they bring. So it looks like whilst Miraflores was originally the main story, it now looks like it might be a supplemental feed to something far more substantial. Let's hope so, huh?
Yeah, fingers crossed. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about the jurisdiction and other companies operating in the area.
Yeah, well, we've been there for many years now, so I think we'd probably go back 6-7 years or so in the Quinchia region. More longer if you go back to original ownership, but let's just say, you know, in recent history. Over that time, we've seen significant changes in Colombia as a place to explore, and the main catalyst for that was the peace accord signed with the FARC sort of 6 years ago now, which ended the conflict in Colombia, and so the risk profile of Colombia changed significantly at that point, and that's evidenced by you're seeing the entry of some of the larger players now coming into Colombia, and so our neighbours and our competitors, if you like, are the big end of town now. So in terms of who's really active in Colombia, Anglo Gold Ashanti is by far the largest. They have several projects that, you know, are over 10 million ounces each, and they've got several of those, Nuevo Chiquiro and La Colostra and a few others. But others in the area that are active as Agnico Eagle, Gran Colombia, Newmont through an alliance with Agnico Eagle, and so on. So there's some big players and some big projects.
Social license is obviously critical importance in Colombia, as opposed anywhere in the world. How's Los Cerros performing in this area, and what's it like to operate in Colombia?
Yeah, it's a big focus of ours. As you say, it's important that you acknowledge the importance of social ESG type dynamics anywhere in the world, but particularly so in Colombia. The local communities have a fair bit of influence over whether projects progress or not. And we're in a very good position because we've been entrenched in the local community for many years now. In fact, our total number of employees is obviously quite fluid, but you know, let's take an average of, let's say, 100 people working for the company. 98 of those people are Colombians, and the vast majority of those live in Quinchia or towns in the area. So we're very much part of the local society, a lot of the local social structures, and very much so part of the local economy. So we're really, really ingrained in the local area, and that's proved very important over the last 18 months in particular, because you know, COVID in Colombia has been devastating, just like many places of the world. And a lot of people were struggling to keep their employment and similar. And coincident with that timing is our success with the drill bit and generating some fantastic results and securing funding, which has allowed us to employ more people. And so we've been actually, fortunately, being able to support the local community far more than we had in previous years. It's been great.
Yeah, and how has sort of COVID affected you guys? I mean, I obviously read a lot of things in the news, and I think South America was hit pretty hard. How hard has it been for you guys during the last 18 months?
Yeah, we're quite lucky. Colombia did a brilliant job at the start of managing coronavirus. Then there was some pretty dark days. Obviously, when you've got porous borders and such, it's pretty hard to control things. So they had a pretty dark sort of central area. But now their vaccination programs are going full steam ahead, and we're seeing the benefits of that, of course. In terms of us directly, most of the team, as I mentioned, are based in this town called Quinchia. And fortunately for us, Quinchia is at the end of a road. It's not a thoroughfare for people traveling north or south or something like that. So you don't get that much transitory type people coming through the town. If you're there, you're there for a reason, because you have a farm there or something like that. And that meant that Quinchia has been better than most areas at controlling coronavirus. It's in the community, but they've been very effective at controlling that. And of course, as a company, we've had very strict protocols in place right from sort of March last year in 2020. We have a number of teams, and those teams don't mix. So we don't have people working across different teams. They're in pods. And we've also invested significantly a while ago in getting some early vaccines into the company and to families and broader into the community. And so a lot of our team are fully vaccinated ahead of the rest of the country. So in terms of it impacting us, hardly at all. You know, we did have to close down in March of 2020, like the rest of the country and much of the world, really, for about a month. But since then, it's been pretty much business as usual for the last 17, 18 months.
That's good to hear. And as a conclusion, what's the outlook for you guys over the next 12 to 18 months? And is there anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, look, I think that the recent capital raising and bringing in that North American interest was another critical sort of pivot point for the company. With all that money now, sort of 23 million in the bank or thereabouts, we're well funded. We can afford to think far more strategically. So not thinking as drill result to drill result, but thinking far more strategically on how we build this entire region. And that's going to create some exciting opportunities, I'm sure, because we can be more strategic in our thinking. So I think the next year or so, with that money behind us and the success at Tesserito and these other projects coming up through the pipeline, I think it's going to be just as exciting 2022 as it was for 2021 for us.
Yeah, Jason, really appreciate your time. It sounds an interesting project, or a few projects. You're surrounded by some good companies as well, which obviously you can learn from. And it sounds interesting. And perhaps you can come back on the show next year to give us an update.
Perfect. I look forward to that. And thanks for your time and for your interest.
Yeah, no worries. And those that are listening, appreciate if you can pass this episode on to others, share it amongst friends, family, other people, maybe other people in South America or even Colombia, so they can obviously hear the story, and we can get Jason on next year for an update as well. So appreciate you for listening, and until next time, happy mining.